Still says waiting for impact on YouTube.
Okay, so yeah, I think we're live. We have 9 viewers.
Oh, on YouTube?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
Right.
Where were we?
Just start from the beginning.
All right. Uh, so you asked me about childhood ambitions and how they sort of how they are drastically different from where I am right now, and my answer was they are as drastically different as you can possibly imagine. Um, as a kid, I played competitive chess for many years, from the age of 6. And when I reached high school, it was a time to sort of decide whether I would pursue further, because I had reached a stage where you know I had to put 10 hours per day minimum to sort of train for that level of chess. And you know I, it was difficult to sort of balance academics at the same time, so I decided to sort of give it a break. That break turned out to be permanent. uh, and I decided to focus on academics because I was good at academics, and I was interested in academics. So that was that's where I was. And then through high school, I was again doing well. I was in CBSE board, getting good grades and everything. But there was always a sort of big question mark as to what was next, what was next, without really a lot of clarity on what that would be at that stage. So
So was your undergraduation in chemistry just circumstantial? Like it just felt right at that time?
yeah, so undergraduate was a very interesting experience. So when I was in grade 12, everyone around you, 99 out of 100 people around you will do engineering, or they will tell you to do engineering, especially if you're interested in sciences. I was interested in science, but I had no idea what engineering was, to be
Mhm.
honest. And at that stage, one thing that scared me a little bit was, okay, if I decide to do computer engineering and 2 years down the line, I don't like computer engineering, what happens, right?
Right.
I go into mechanical engineering, 2 years later, 3 years later, I don't like mechanical engineering. What do I do? And at that stage, when I was 17 in 12th grade, I had absolutely no idea of what is it that I was good at, or what had no idea. And at that, and before, even, of course, I had written all the entrance exams. I did pretty well in all of the. I didn't go through the sort of coaching that I heard the IIT thing that I heard now starts at sixth grade, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous, completely ridiculous. But anyway, thankfully I had a sort of a balanced childhood with a lot of hobbies and interests and all of that. But of course, I wrote the sort of AIEEE. I got like a pretty very good all India rank and everything. But then I found out about this college in Bangalore when I was in 12th grade through some contacts, and this college was, first of all, it was there was no the undeclared major for 2 years. You study maths, you study biology, you study physics, you study chemistry. You don't have to pick a subject for another 2 years. So that was something that
Okay.
I loved. So I could push the goalpost further. That was one thing. And then the other thing was, when I went for the entrance exam for this, this is Satya Sai Institute of High Learning. I don't know how many of you know. It's sort of hidden in plain sight in Bangalore. The system was very different. It was secular education, but it had sort of a Gurukul system where they taught you, it was more about all around development, sports, sort of spiritual exercise, yoga, whatever, about Indian culture, this, that, and everything. It was kind of that was the system that was advertised, and in addition to secular education. So I was like, this is great. I in fact joined there before the counseling even started. So the term started on June 1st. So I had absolutely no idea. I just went. um, didn't care what relatives said and friends said at that point. Of course, my parents were very supportive, but even they were sort of puzzled as to what is he exactly trying to do. So when I joined, there was nothing. Again, I was just sort of buying myself more time, so I had 2 more years to decide. And this place, again, I did talk to a lot of alumni from this institute, and they all of them had only great things to say about it, not just on the other aspects of education, but particularly on the academic part of the focus here. So, and that turned out to be true. I think I would not trade those 3 years with pretty much anything looking back, because that's also the stage where you're not just learning academically, but you're also learning a lot of life skills. And that really defines your personality for a very, very long time. Your interests, your hobbies, how you interact with people, how empathy, you just, things that you cannot put into a curriculum. I learned there. But the sort of huge advantage there was that also, it was a very, very academic, probably for sciences. I would argue that it is, of course, everyone talks about Stevens and Loyola and all these places, but I would say that this place doesn't advertise, but the curriculum is, I think, better than any other place that I've traveled since and all that. So anyway, so when it comes to chemistry, I did not like chemistry in high school. The syllabus was, it was always about, you just memorize reactions, and sort of there's just huge amount of content. I mean, that's true of other subjects as well, but chemistry particularly was really not appealing to me for a long time. And as I said, I did math, physics, and chemistry. I loved mathematics. I loved, physics was also taught well. But at the end of the second year, the teachers of chemistry really changed my trajectory. Because suddenly, and chemistry is, because you're kind of dumped with so much content, you don't really appreciate some of the sort of fundamental ideas and impact of chemistry, especially at the school level and even in the undergraduate level, not just in India but also abroad. I've taught a lot of undergrads at Stanford, and oh my god, they also hate chemistry. So there is no exception to the rule. Okay. But there were these few teachers who I will obviously remember the rest of my life, who really gave me a perspective of chemistry that I did not appreciate. And it was just sort of a, no-brainer after that, at that point, that, oh, this is what I want to do. So that's sort of, long-winded way of saying how I ended up in chemistry. Mathematics was a close second, because, I think I would have done well in mathematics also, because the curriculum was such that you start as a core mathematics major, but then you slowly gravitate towards computer science. And that part of computer science today is extremely valued. Sort of computer scientists that come with a maths background. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, but given the importance of AI and all these problems today, computer scientists with a mathematics background are just golden at this point. So that was another trajectory that I was considering, but it's okay. Ended up so that's how it was really, I would say, teachers made a difference.
That's really good to hear. So we'd love to know about your journey in chemistry, spanning some of the top institutes in the world. How different was, the education proffered by each of these institutes, and how did they add value in their own unique ways?
Yeah. So, as I said, I went to, Satyasai Institute of Higher Learning. I would say that was the best possible chemistry curriculum in India. Even my colleagues at IIT today agree with that now, who are, who have not been through that system. So it's not a biased opinion anymore. And then I went to IIT, and so it was also an honors curriculum. So, the first year of IIT I had already done. Whatever the so I came to IIT Madras for my master's in chemistry, and pretty much most of the first year curriculum I had already done. So it was, there was,
Smooth
I mean,
sailing.
they were good teachers, everything, the ambience at IIT is great. But I think the real value addition of IIT was the exposure to research. Of course, Satyasai Institute was great for education, but at that age, and also at that age, you don't necessarily need a lot of research exposure, right? You're trying to really understand concepts. You have all your life to do research, right?
Right.
So I was fine. That's not like a comfort. At the master's level, it's kind of good to have, and of course now all the other institutions other than IIT have also kind of have upped their game in terms of there's a lot more funding, and now everyone's kind of on board, on par to some extent. But that was really the big exposure that IIT Madras gave me to research, and the people in the chemistry department were just doing fantastic research, and then talking to them, interacting with them, sort of really. And I worked with Professor Pradeep at IIT Madras, who's a very well-known scientist in India, very inspirational scientist as well. So that also added a lot of value to where I wanted, what I wanted to do, and it also reaffirmed my belief that I was chemist. I had like an aptitude for chemistry, right? That was so IIT was great, and then the research experience, as I said, was great. I worked on nanoscience with respect to biology. Again, when I was graduating from IIT, I had worked on these sort of nano materials, so as to say. So that was what I wanted to do. And when I wrote my essays, when I applied to US institutions for PhD, I said, this is all I want to do: spectroscopy. I want to do nanoscale materials, and blah blah blah. I wrote, and then I showed up there. And one of the great things about US institutions, which is somewhat true in some of the Indian institutions today as well, as I observe, is that as you join a PhD program, you're not wed to anyone. You're not tied to anyone. You can sort of explore. You get a little, again, it's comes back to my 12th standard decision of I don't know what to do, I want more time.
Right.
So the system gives you that time in the US especially. So you get about 9 months. You're free to talk to any advisors, and advisors are happy to talk to you. And that builds up your but what really changed my um, trajectory and to this day that influences what I work on today is a conference that Stanford used to organize. They still organize. It was the summer before the term starts. So it was a
Okay.
week-long conference called Energy at Stanford. So this was a week-long conference only for incoming, masters and PhD students, and it was tailored especially for issues related to energy. So you would have and energy is a massive problem today, and it is you had chemists, you have material scientists, you have mechanical engineers, electrical engineers to some extent. It's a multi-pronged effort, right? So what, 5-6 departments at least, I would say. And they gave talks, and the conference attendees would go to, of course, you had to apply to the conference, you had to say why you were interested, you write a little essay and all of that.
Mhm.
And this is the incoming cohort, irrespective of what department. So this is sort of the whole school of education, school of all the graduate students. Out of that entire pool, there's a set of about, I believe, 40 or 50 students that are selected to attend this conference. So that really opened up my, the way it was pitched. Of course, the whole point of the conference was to expose these students to problems in energy, right? Different aspects of energy. And that, by the end of that conference, I had decided that, to hell with nanoparticles and spectroscopy. This is what I want. This is what I wanted to do, because that it was such a compelling conference, and it continues to be that conference, and I think it is rightly done so. So then it was a process of talking to a lot of people in material science engineering, chemical engineering, chemistry. That's, at least these are the people that I talked to. About what they did, and and then it's a little bit like finding your advisor is like finding a life partner in a way. It's not, you have to be, they should like how it's not just chemistry, right? At that, so everyone's resume at a place like Stanford University is basically par excellence. There's no comparison there. But really what comes down to what deciding what you want to do is this sort of personal chemistry. How you think about science, how you think about the problem, how you motivate yourself, and then you talk to your graduate students in the lab, and you kind of get an idea of the culture in the lab, and based on that you sort of make a decision. And then I worked in a sub area of chemistry called electrochemistry, which is again not taught well at the school level or in the college level. um, and this area, I mean, I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to talk more about it. Is really it was sort of a very niche area of chemistry, but I think in the last decade or 2 decades, it has just come to the center of chemistry. And obviously I'm biased, but it's such a fascinating field of chemistry, and it has repercussions and influences in pretty much every field, I would say. So anyway, your question is pretty broad, so I'm just trying to say whatever comes to mind. And then after PhD, I went to PhD in chemistry. I went to Berkeley. So one sort of noticeable thing that was evident when I went to Stanford from IIT was just the sort of dynamics between engineering departments and science departments. In India, almost science departments are like a sort of get a stepmother treatment. Uh, and then you go to Stan. I mean, ask anyone. You go to MIT. You go. These are technically. I mean, mostly they're known for engineering. Right? MIT is an engineering school, and then it's the opposite. Like the science people are everywhere, and then engineers are kind of quiet. They just go to their work and then come. So it gives you. And suddenly, I was like, oh my god, I'm not. I made a good decision to take sciences, because suddenly, like, you were in the limelight, and all of these problems, the bigger fundraisers were the scientists, not the engineers, for the university. So the university gave a lot of importance to science departments. And then you go to Berkeley, and there is a school of chemistry. There is a department of chemistry, there's a school of engineering, and then Berkeley has a school of chemistry. There is a dean, there's a whole school. So even more, because Berkeley is a very, very well-known place for chemistry. It's like, the Lewis model of electronic structure. G.N. Lewis pretty much started the department. So, it has a very, very rich history of, phenomenal chemists. And University of California, it occupies such a central role in the UC system. A lot of chemistry professors have become like vice chancellors of the universities and so on. So even bigger, step up, I would say, in terms of chemistry, because Berkeley is just such a fascinating place. And of course, Stanford and Berkeley tend to compete with each other at undergraduate level, but the differences are sort of minor. One is a private school, one is a public school. It's more of like a humorous difference rather than a difference in terms of intensity and kind of the curriculum there. I don't know. I sort of said all sorts of random things,
No,
but
no,
I
that was
hope to.
great. We actually
Okay.
covered the scope of my next question as well. So moving on to,
Okay.
something about Neuralink. So for the
Finally.
benefit of those listening to us live, could you please elaborate on Neuralink's vision and what it exactly entails?
Yeah. So I think in terms of um, the goal is definitely the human AI symbiosis, right? It's just the sort of merger of man and machine, in a very philosophical, very broad way. That is sort of what it is. Um, but there are different layers of complexity to that. And one of and this is a very, very complex problem. It's just, we used to get emails of, oh, if I have the Neuralink, can I play this game better? Can I get these there's this big gamers are very interested in our work, because they want to somehow tie it to gaming skills and so on. So but this is a very broad area, and the difficulty is because of the brain itself. It's the sort of the last unconquered frontier, I would say, in terms of the sciences. Even today, we don't know much about the brain. And just evolutionarily speaking, we have this giant skull around the brain to sort of protect it. And there is something called neuroplasticity, which means the brain sort of moves around. As you if you're a kid, kid brain to an adult brain, there are a lot of as you learn, you learn music, you learn to play the piano. There are new circuits that are being formed in your brain. From a one-handed piano player to a two-handed piano player, there are these new connections that are formed in the brain. So it's a very, very complex organ. Um, so achieving symbiosis is sort of easy to say. I think that's the aspirational goal. But really, when you try to break it down into what exactly this is, there are some sort of short-term goals, and there are medium-term goals, and there are some long-term goals. In terms of short-term goals, so again, as I said, even the short-term goals are extremely challenging. None of this is easy. None of this is easy. And to have a person like Elon, lead this from the front and giving this, so much publicity is probably the reason why you and I are talking today. It does it a lot of good, because you need more resources, you need more people. To sort of work on this, right? There are different areas and different ways of approaching this problem. So broadly speaking, that's Neuralink's goal of, as Elon said in one of our public events, this is Fitbit for the brain. So you're tracking brain activity, whatever Fitbit does, our device will do. That's the easy part. But in terms of short term, we are mainly looking at our first population of interest are people with spinal cord damage. These are called quadriplegics, paraplegics, and so on. So you have a brain, and you have hands and legs, right? Every time you think, oh, I want to move my hand, your hand moves, right? So there's a sense, it goes through the spinal cord. So people that have these spinal cord injuries, they're very tragic incidents. Car accidents. Some people fall from a tree, fall from a building, and then if you fall in an awkward position, you could break some of the bones in your vertebrae, and then that basically cuts the connection between the brain and your body. So what happens is, these people have functional brains, but they're neck down, they're completely paralyzed for the rest of their lives. Okay,
Right.
so you one day you're walking, you're dancing, you're walking, you're eating, you're sleeping, and next day some freak accident happens, and then you have your hands are fine, your brain is fine, but there's no connection between the two. So it's a very, very difficult disease, and we have our advisory board exclusively, patients that have kind of gone through this, and they share their experiences. They give us a lot of feedback onto about what is it that they want in terms of device functionality. So that is really a sort of first target audience. And as I said, these people have spinal cord damage, so that means we can just think of a wire getting cut, right? So now how do you patch it, right? And the nervous system is such a complex thing that it's not easy. So the standard way of doing this in neuroscience is basically you put something in your brain that kind of reads that activity. Now, how does the brain, this is brain chemistry. A lot of sort of functional parts of the brain, like very sort of upper level, your sensory part, your vision, your motor part, your auditory part, vocal, all of these, the five senses as in a very broad sense. The centers that control these functions are at the outer part of the brain. Okay,
Okay.
that makes it easier relatively, right? The inner part of the brain has to do with sleep, dreams, cognitive abilities, consciousness, all of those higher dimensions are inside. But the sort of very basic functions are, they exist on the what is called the cortex of the brain, which is basically, if a brain is a ball, it is that the outer surface. So when you're trying to go in through the skull, that will be the first, you don't have to go too deep. So that is the first advantage of trying to do cortical stuff. So what Neuralink is trying to do is, when you were a normal functioning human being, when you moved your hand, let's say there are some parts of the brain that are, let's say you're in the what is called the motor cortex. Motor cortex is a region of the brain that determines what moves your hand. Before I go to motor cortex, till today we don't have a circuit model for the brain. It's not like brain is a circuit model. You turn these three switches, my hand goes 45 degrees up. You turn these, switch. There's no correlation, but you cannot reduce the brain to just purely, a basic circuit, electrical circuit. It's not that you turn these three resistors off and then my left hand will move this much. There's nothing of that sort. There are people working in this area, but fundamentally there is no there's no proof that that is how it is. That it is a very complex system. However, there are ways in which you can sort of read the activity. So let's say you're a functioning human being, you move your hand, you read patterns in that part of your brain, right? This person is moving your hand this way, the XYZ neurons are firing, and then you move your left hand. Again, I'm obviously very, very simplifying. I'm simplifying the whole thing to a huge degree. But then whatever pattern you see, you record that pattern, and then you feed that to things attached to your hand, right? Let's say you have these what are called actuators. So let's say if I do ABC in my brain, my finger moves this way. Okay, and then you read that in a normal human patient, and then you go to someone with this problem, and then you basically code that in that ABC. Okay, whenever that ABC fires, it, instead of going through the nervous system, which is broken, right, it goes through an external circuit to something on your hand that kind of stimulates your muscles, and your hand moves. So you think and your finger moves, right? So you're basically bypassing the central nervous system through this. Now, this is not new technology. This has been around for, I would say at least 20 years or so. But if you look at patients that were sort of undergoing this, first of all, you had to be to do any of this, you have to be in a very, very sophisticated hospital. Okay, the team that is working with you should have funding from the government. If their funding runs out, the project is done, right? And then the other thing is, you will see some of these patients from a decade or two ago with their giant plug sticking out of their head, right? And then you have these connectors, and then the room full of equipment, and you're trying to, that is so that is not a scalable model, right? If you want to have help even among the people with spinal cord damage, that is not a scalable model. because this is just sort of, just one or two here and there. So so the first, I would say the big contribution of Neuralink in this space is sort of miniaturizing the whole thing.
Okay.
You see, I'm sure you have watched your Neuralink videos online, where we've done, animals. You saw monkey playing a
The
video game, and
monkey.
you see, the pig snout thing, and you can't see the implant, right? These pigs are, coexisting with other pigs that are normal. And there is, with pigs especially, it's a very fascinating thing. You can learn a lot by their social life. They're very social
Okay.
creatures. So if there is a sick pig, the rest of the pigs will basically, throw the pig out. Like, they won't interact with the other pig. Like, they'll be an outcast. But what we are finding is that, pigs with implants are no different than pigs without implants. There's no social rejection. That already tells you that there is no sort of, there's no, like, they're not sick, right? That is a pig. Of course, monkeys are also doing really well. And the next is obviously human. But of course, if you want to get, the proper approvals, you have to go through the different, mice, pigs, monkeys, and so on. There's like a standard route for that. So anyway, I'm sort of going to other topics, but that's sort of what Neuralink is trying to do in the beginning, is to basically read from the brain. See, Elon's mantra is very simple. If you can help a person operate a computer, right? If you can help a person move a mouse,
Mhm.
right? You're, I mean, that's a huge improvement, right? You're a vegetable, right? You're literally a vegetable. You cannot do anything. You can't move your head, you can't move your nothing, right? And from there, if you can go to moving a mouse, you can have a bank account. You can have you can chat with people, you can message people, you can start your own business, you can have your own work, you can do, you can be a call service, call center operator. You're suddenly, these people that are extremely dependent on their family and their immediate surroundings, you're just opening
Right.
a world of opportunity by just, enabling them to use a mouse. So I think this is a very profound idea that Elon has. People keep asking, like, okay, what are you going to do, like, and then there are always, gamers asking us about all these questions. But I think initially the most profound application would be for someone to be able to move a mouse. And that is just, and you saw that video of monkey playing a video game, right? That is exactly what we want to do. The monkey thinks it's operating a joystick, so we've read all the information that in that monkey's brain about moving a joystick, and now we disconnect the joystick, and the monkey continues to play, but actually the game is being fed by the brain directly, not through the joystick, right? And it's
Right.
it's able to play with the same speed, right? So speed is also important. So yeah, so that's sort of what we're doing currently. Of course, there will be a lot of questions. We can go into more details.
Yeah, sure. So one of the most striking questions was this, which the students had, was that it's quite intimidating to think about the future possibilities of such a venture. So would this be the first step in the homogeneity of humans and AI? If so, the obvious concern that arises is, are we extracting humanity from humans?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't think anyone has we don't know, right? We are going into the unknown. It is very difficult to sort of, expect what will happen. I think right now we are adding, so taking humans out of humans. I think we're adding human to humans that have lost human functionality,
Uh-huh.
right? So that's the sort of looking at the cup half full rather than half empty. So if we have interacted with these patients, right? You're not taking any humanity away from them, right? There was one of our consumer advisory board members, um, consumer advisory board, sorry, was a person that had just gotten married, and he was, a doctor in New York, and then he's crossing a road, and then, a car hits him, and now he's paraplegic for life. Like, there's no human, 99% of the functions that you and I have as a human is gone, right? So if you're adding, 10% of that human back to that person, that itself is a, huge thing. So I mean, your question is absolutely valid. But I think the motivations at this point, at least, are, I think, very, very inspirational. um, but again, we absolutely have to answer those questions. And these are questions that these patients also have. If I have this link, what about privacy? What happens to my, do I control the data? Does someone else control my data? And for a link, there's also, there's read, which is what I was describing so far, right? You read from the brain and then do things externally. And there's also write, right? So write is you basically send electrical impulses into the brain, and then directly you activate the brain. For some people, there are parts that are, for vision especially, that is the most. I mean, vision, you can't really put a external wire into your eye, right? That has to come through the brain. So the standard mode of trying to stimulate vision is basically send electrical impulses in what is called the visual cortex, or that part of the brain that controls. So that is write into the brain. That is not read, right? There is both read and write. So when it comes to write, then then these sorts of security issues and all become extremely important, right? You don't want to get you don't want to get hacked. I mean, by you, it's not your
True.
computer, it's you, right? So obviously there are a lot of questions, but again, there is no, I mean, we have the technology to sort of, it's like if you have a pager today, nobody can hack you. I mean, it's like that, right? You can decide how much, you accept your cookies on your browser, right? It's a bit like that. Hopefully, it is that modular, and but again, as I said, the challenges to sort of, this is not a, it's not an easy problem, right? So these questions will definitely come, but at this point, if you just have sort of a medium term outlook, not vision has to be long term, but if you just have a, okay, I'm going to help these patients, right? That itself is, I think that's a very achievable goal, and that's a desirable goal, right? Beyond that, what happens, I think we'll have to answer after that, right? But this is a very difficult question. I think we all have to think about this, what this means by symbiosis. What exactly does it mean? I mean, if you think about it, this is something that Elon also points out, is we are already we are symbiotic with our phones, right? A phone is like a limb, right? Almost.
It's like part of us.
It's a part of our body. If you don't know, if you don't have your phone, you think like you've lost, you don't have, you're missing a leg or a hand or something, right? So we are already sort of, it's one way, this human AI symbiosis. That's one way to look at this. So is that good? Is that bad? You can have all those conversations about your phone also, right? Your camera can be hacked, your data can be hacked, and all of that is very relevant for your phone as well. So I think these questions will be, as a society, will have to sort of eventually figure out as we move along. But at least on the brain side, I think there are significant challenges that need to be, surmounted before we kind of ask that question.
So one of our viewers has a question that's relevant to what we're talking about. So they ask, in how many years will we have deep implants related to depression and insomnia?
Yeah. So there are there's a very mature cousin of this technology, which is called deep brain stimulation. Okay, these probes are very readily available. Medtronic sells this. First of all, deep brain is hard. People don't really understand, um, you know, how it works, right? But deep brain stimulation is a very mature thing. The recovery rate is 99.99%. The surgery recovery rate. And that what you typically do is, you insert literally two rods from the brain inside into the deeper part of the brain, and then the wires come outside the skin, and you have like a pacemaker kind of a device near your heart. And what the application is mainly for much older people that have this tremor, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so people that have early onset Parkinson and some sort of tremor related problems, and this is only an old age problem. This is not a young age problem, right? So that is almost 99% of the demographic that uses deep brain stimulation. So there is an example of that. So what happens is, these people, as soon as there is a tremor, there is a sensor that's connected in the hand that senses it, and then you basically pass a, like, amount of current, right? You I don't want to say you electrocute the brain, because that sounds very drastic, but that's essentially what you're doing. You're passing some current into that part of the brain, and then the tremor stops automatically. And these people are now, again, they can, because of the tremor, they're not able to text, right? They cannot use a phone, they cannot open a doorknob. So again, with these people also, the quality of life has just dramatically improved with deep brain stimulation. But things like depression and insomnia, the jury is still out there in terms of what it is that you really want, and where do you want it, right? So that part is difficult. The In terms of Neuralink versus, so deep brain stimulation is just a rod. Okay, there's two. Just think of a this pen, right? You're putting this pen into the um, into your brain to this device, whereas Neuralink is not a pen. Neuralink is a very, very soft material. I can't say what the material is, but it's a very, very soft material. And the way we do it with a robot, robot takes this, it's like your sewing machine that your mother or grandmother uses in the house. So a robot is essentially a sewing machine. It When we make these, they are called threads. They are thinner, 100 times thinner than the human hair. So you basically drill a hole in your in your skull. Okay, and then there are our device comes with these hair like things attached to something, and then the robot comes, and then it has very good sensors, it has very good optics. It basically there's like a loop at the end of the thread, just like a sewing needle, how you sort of do that. It picks it up, push it in and the surgeon literally just clicks buttons, right? Surgeon doesn't, I mean, just says, okay, put it here, 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 and avoid blood vessels. And we have cameras that will avoid blood vessels, and then you just go. Now, that is great for a cortex because, as I said, cortex is on the outer side of the brain, right? Now, when you're trying to go very deep, then the needle also has to go very deep, right? So then, and brain is not this, vertical kind of a structure. It's like a, like Maggie noodles, right? So if you have if you take Maggie noodles, okay, where you drain out most of the water, okay, and you try to if you see the top layer, right, you can avoid the top layer. Couple of layers you can get lucky, but beyond that you're going to hit the noodle, right?
Right.
So it's a very simple example, but that's sort of what it is. So the deep brain stimulation is to answer your question, it is already a mature technology, and it has an extraordinary recovery rate, and there are a lot of patients that have this implant. They all tend to be above 75 years in age. So there is a question of whether uh, such implants last for 30 years or 40 years, so that younger people can have that kind of implant. Because by 75 your brain is already kind of not at its peak, right? So the damage is also difficult to assess, right?
Right.
In terms of functionality. So yeah, good question.
All right. So just one last question to wrap up our discussion about Neuralink. So in terms of accessibility, going global, scaling up production, where does Neuralink stand right now?
I think that's really what Elon is bringing to the table, right? Till before Neuralink, this was just some sort of academic project that very rich universities could do on patients. As I said, if you get funding from National Institute of Health and buy all this equipment, you can get patient volunteers, and that's how it's been running. What Elon is really trying to do, when he says Fitbit for the brain, he literally means it.
Right.
He wants to kind of match that price point. Is just it's like buying an iPhone or buying just you go get your link, and then 2-3 years later new version comes out and you go get another one. So that is really what he's aiming, which is just this completely new perspective to this field, which is you put it in and then take it out, put one more in, take one out, put one more in. So this is what is called upgradability, and that he has kept that as a very important requirement for this. And he's all about scaling up. Electric cars are, single-handedly, I would say, he has provided the Tesla model is now just being copied everywhere, right? Till then, electric cars were a very niche hobby for very rich people. Common people it still has to costs have to go down further, but I think what he has shown with Tesla is that it's all about scalability, and every problem, the way we address any engineering challenge at Neuralink, it always has that in mind. Can you make 100,000 of these? How many per week are you making, right? That is always a question that he asks. So scalability and affordability are absolutely and at the top of his mind. And the other thing is, there are not many neurosurgeons in the world. Okay, so there's only a handful of neurosurgeons that can even do this. So he wants this to be like a LASIK surgery. So it's like people that get a LASIK surgery, you go into the optician, optometrist, click some buttons, and the laser comes and does the thing, and then you walk out. right? So so that of course has to come from technology. The technology is what drives these things. It's not just like, you will it and it happens. So that is why that is why the robot comes. The purpose of our robotics team is basically to make this into a sort of a mass production robot that, your street corner optometrist can have, or not optometrist, but whatever. And then you just like walk in and, this happens, and then you come out. And that's, in my own time at Neuralink, I have seen these, the time for the surgery and complexity of the surgery like dramatically drop. And that is just sheer willpower, because neuroscientists don't have an onus to, if they're taking 6 hours for a brain surgery, nobody's telling them to do it in an hour, right? So it continues to be 6 hours. But Elon is really trying to make it 1 hour so that people can afford it. If it's a 6 hour surgery, nobody's going to do it, right? Normal, healthy adults are not going to do it. So that is something that is at the, it's a very, very important parameter that drives the company, is scalability and affordability.
That's really good to hear. It's in fact amazing to hear about all the technology that's revolutionizing the world for the better. Thank you so much for this conversation, sir. It was great having you. So before you leave, we'd like for you to share your words of wisdom with the school students and undergraduates listening to this right now.
Well, I don't know how much wisdom I have to share, but I would say, whatever you do, strive for excellence. Have self belief. What, it doesn't matter what you do. You want to become a writer, be good at it. Right? Try to be good at it. You want to be an architect, go for it. Like, be a good architect, right? You want to be a musician, be good at it. So that striving for excellence should really become a habit as a part of you. Whatever you do, do it like, in the best possible way. Then it doesn't matter what you do, right? You excel in pretty much everything that you do. In terms of chemistry, I mean, my world is chemistry. I can tell you that, chemistry is really the center. There's a new phrase coined at the turn of the century. It's called central science. So if you think about any problem, the answer is in chemistry. You think about climate change, right? One of the biggest problems facing our humanity. How do energy is obviously comes to the picture, right? So if we talk about solar energy, you try to store the energy in batteries. You need electrochemistry. You need chemistry. I won't even go into electrochemistry. You need chemistry. You want to make ammonia. Ammonia is one of the biggest ammonia production. Ammonia goes into fertilizer. Fertilizer, helps us grow crops to feed humanity. That production is very energy intensive, causes a huge dent in our, for global warming. So alternate ways of producing ammonia, chemistry. You want to, electric vehicles, chemistry. The engineering part is there's nothing. I mean, there's a lot of engineering to be done in these systems, but innovation is not on that side. That those things exist already. Innovation is on the chemistry side. And okay, so that is one thing. Now people, if you want to discover new drugs for diseases, that is chemistry. How do proteins fold? That is biochemistry. That is chemistry. And then how do you, if a protein folds in the wrong direction, then you get a disease. So how do you prevent that? You pop a pill. How that molecule goes and attaches to that protein, that is chemistry. It's just everywhere, right? And of course we talked about neuroscience and the neuroscience related things. And for example, in Neuralink, one of the big questions is, put this in, there's something called corrosion. Materials degrade over time, right? If you want to put this material in your brain, it has to last for at least a decade, right? How do you study that or understand that? Chemistry. And how do you make these probes? Chemistry. So that's it's sort of everywhere. I feel free to sort of write to me and reach out to me if you have any questions regarding any of these things. But really, I would say the underlying principle, especially in school, is, if you don't know what you want to do, that's totally fine. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do. It'll show up. It'll show up at some point. But really, what matters is, whatever you do, you try to do it well. That is one. And then you have this kind of self belief that, I want to do this well, right? I can do it well. So I think those two are important values. And I think it doesn't matter what you want to go to become a Olympic gymnast. That's also fine, but you have to be a good Olympic gymnast, right? That is what matters. So if you drive yourself in that way, field and subjects and all of these things will not matter at some point.
I'm sure you piqued the interest of a lot of students today, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were to slowly start considering chemistry as a possible career option. It was an absolute pleasure to host you once again. Thank you so much for taking out your time, especially on a Sunday, for this conversation. Thank you once again,
Pleasure,
sir.
pleasure, pleasure. Thank you for having me.